pilots, this is Warbird 66, and sorry for the long break, but I was working on several projects, so here one of the first I actually finished in some time. A while back I added retracts to my Parkzone P-51, and a buddy at the field was so interested in it that I finally gave in and sold him the complete wing. So the idea came up to change my plane again, do the whole mod all over again, maybe a little bit different this time, and including a new paint job, of course. Since I had so much fun modding some of my other planes, I thought my older P-51 had more than earned a nice new dress. So when I hit a little roadblock while working on one of my other planes, my Hawker Hurricane, I turned to my side project to give myself time to think about a few things. And what better way to clear the head than modding a plane? So here I am with a few pictures of the plane. As I said, I put in retracts again, and again I went for the E-flite 10 to 15 size electric retracts. But I also put in some nav lights, I outfitted the plane with plastic servo covers, and for the first time I used filler for the cable ducts and not tape. Time would tell if that was a good idea or not. And of course I put in flaps as well. I think I didn't mention that. As you can see, this time I went with a different way of installing the gear. I built standard gear mounts out of 6mm plywood to bolt the gear right into the wing. I also changed the pilot and put in a more or less scale cockpit kit that I found on Shapeways. Not cheap, but unique and very good looking. Even it was not as good as I first expected it to be. Motor and electronics stayed more or less the same. I only upgraded the ESC to a Hobby King 40 amp. And I put in a 3-axis controller from Orange, which I use only on the rudder control. A very nice tool if you ask me, and not the least bit expensive, especially if you consider how good it works. After that I started installing the light kit, which I bought at my local hobby shop. It's their own development and works pretty good. The LEDs are very bright and you can see it even during daylight. Cutting out the flaps and installing the flap servos were almost routine. The whole flap installation was done in one evening. The most time-consuming thing was the soldering of the servos and to put in new servo wires. After putting everything together, and a little test flight of course, I started thinking about a new paint job. And even if I always wanted a blue nose P-51, I decided that I would go with a less common US dark green paint scheme. After that I patched everything up as filler and prepared the wing and the fuselage for the primer. The grass field here is pretty bumpy, as you can see, and I put the gear as far forward as possible. Still, nose overs are a possibility. The only thing left to do was to change the name of the old Gunfighter. This time I went with Dream Girl. Fitting, I think. The first test flight was more or less uneventful. I had to do a little bit trimming on the rudder and the elevator and the ailerons. I tested the landing gear, but that was about it. The only thing that was a bit tricky was to find a suitable setting for the flaps and the elevator to do a more or less decent landing with the plane. And I first set the elevator for about 3% down to counteract the flaps, but as I found out during the flight, that was totally unnecessary. During that last pass you could see the landing lights pretty good. I install these on most of my planes now because of the camouflage and The planes become pretty difficult to see during dawn or during sunset. I mean, everything is fine as long as the plane is high in the air, but if you go below the horizon, I mean, you can see the dark trees or the buildings in the back. The plane becomes increasingly difficult to spot, especially during the landing. And if you lost sight of the plane for even a second, you might crash. After the successful test flight, I got serious with the paint job. First, I gave everything a coat of white primer before I started with the pre-shading, and then put the final color on, which is US dark green, the same paint or color I used on my P-47. As you can see, I covered the upper side of the wing with polystyrol because I was worried that during a hard landing the gear might damage the wing because there was only a few millimeters of foam left. After that, it was time for a final test fit, so I started to put everything together and then began work on the details, including the weathering. And here are the pictures of the finished model, my version of Parkzones P-51, the Dream Girl. you guys enjoyed my little slideshow, and if you guys have any questions about the plane, how I put it together or why I did this or that, just send me a short note and I'll see what I can do to answer it. Thanks for watching and have fun modding. Warbird Fan 66 out.